There are many products on the market that we're told are infallible, and that's not true. And I get messages from people constantly that say, I accept this product. I was told it was an impossibility, that the thing that I was trying to prevent wouldn't happen. And then early symptoms started happening and they kind of turned their brain off to it. They dulled that spidey sense. And so they didn't seek immediate healthcare or medical treatment because they just thought it was an impossibility.
My friends, we get to talk about a topic today that somehow is controversial, but it should not be. Making one's own decision as an adult should not be controversial, and finding information about anything in the world, particularly something that someone wants you to put in or on your body, should not be controversial. It should be easy. And this interview is so good. You are listening to the Healthy Parenting Handbook podcast. It's just the thing we all said we needed when we first became parents. Remember that feeling? Where's the handbook for this? My guest today is literally writing chapter after chapter in the parenting handbook, and I cannot wait to introduce you to her. Alexandra is the founder of Just the Inserts, a platform dedicated to empowering individuals with accessible, transparent information about medical choices, which should not be controversial, but somehow it is. With a solid research background and a passion for informed consent, she guides people through the complexities of pharmaceutical products and decisions. Her commitment to clear, reliable information has earned her recognition as a trusted voice in the community, helping countless individuals make more informed, confident healthcare decisions. In this interview, you will hear me tell a story and realize some stuff about my own life, my own stress responses, and my own parenting that I've literally never realized until talking with Alexandra. She is so good. Who am I? I'm your host, Katie Kimball from Kids Cook Real Food. And on the Healthy Parenting Handbook podcast, I bring together experts in the fields of health, parenting, nutrition, and more to help you truly raise independent kids. Parenting is the toughest and the most rewarding job in the world. Doctors should be making parenting easier, and sometimes they're making it more tough. So thank you for joining me today to consult this episode of the Healthy Parenting Handbook, your guide to raising kids intentionally. Whew, it's a good one. You guys, it's a good one. Don't get scared by that timestamp being it's probably pushing a little over 50 minutes. But this one is worth it. It is all about raising awareness, increasing your education, and allowing you not to make the decision that I want you to make or that Alexandra wants you to make, but the decision that you, your own values and your own education pushes you to make or directs you to make, because you should have informed education, right? Consent, the ability to make a decision. This is a good one. Listen to the whole thing, listen to it twice. And be sure to follow Alexandra on Instagram at Just the Inserts and go to her website at justtheinserts.com. Alexandra, I'm so happy to have you here. I fell headlong into your Instagram while preparing for this interview, so I would definitely recommend everyone follow you there. You do such good work, and we appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. I have been on so many podcasts lately because I said, when I broke my anonymity and said, okay, I'm the one behind this account, I just was willing to go on anyone's podcast and talk about anything. But my favorite interviews are the ones with parents, because I'm a parent myself. So I feel like I really resonate with everyone just trying to find credible, clear information. And that's exactly what I do. So thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Well, I did not realize you started out anonymous, because we haven't been connected quite that long. So I definitely want to hear like that timeline, like how long you stayed faceless and nameless. But catch us up on generally your story. You just said you're a parent. We know that a lot of our lives change in big ways when we become parents, and sometimes it changes the work we do. So how'd you get into this?
So I was active duty military, and then when I got out, I ended up becoming a yoga teacher because I was just so stressed out from my first assignment was the Pentagon, and I was working 16 to sometimes 19-hour days. It was just absolutely bonkers, and I was so incredibly out of cycle with my nutrition and my stress levels. And so I actually kind of started with food and overhauling controlling my diet and seeing the things that might cause more inflammation in my body, and realizing that maybe the food that is readily accessible in a grocery store might not be the best for me, might not be the best for my family. So I started to become very natural minded when I got out of the military. And then when I was pregnant with my first child in 2019, I started researching, like everybody else, all the medical products that are recommended to us as pregnant women. And as I was researching, I started realizing the things that I had preconceived notions about wasn't necessarily true. But I was also really put off by the entire conversation, because everybody knows, you go on Instagram and it's just a dogfight on polarizing views of, yes, you absolutely have to accept these products. No, don't accept these products. And there really wasn't any middle ground. There really wasn't any intellectual curiosity on either side of the argument. And I just cut through it all and realized we all just want what is best for ourselves, our communities, and our families. And if we go into it realizing that informed consent, which is what I talk a lot about on, we can talk more of that, but informed consent is a human right. Everyone deserves it, whether you accept, delay, or decline any or all medical products. So I just started sharing my research on Instagram. It blew up. I didn't realize how many other people felt the same way I did, that we just wanted credible information. So if someone doesn't know about me, I take .gov resources from the CDC, FDA, NIH, basically all of HHS, which is probably a pretty common term right now that we all talk about. The health secretary that was just nominated and confirmed, which was Robert F. Kennedy Jr. He's now in charge of HHS. But I take all of that information from those websites and I put them in more digestible chunks for you to be able to research that information. It's all credible information. It's all cited for you to go research it yourself. But I just make it a little bit more digestible for you as a parent to realize, okay, if I accept these products, the manufacturer and FDA says that these are potential adverse reactions that could happen. Or maybe there are conditions that me or my child has that might predispose me to an increased risk for an adverse reaction. So as I was starting to research all this, I just started putting it out and citing everything and realized I'm not alone.
Just to get timeline, like you're still pregnant when you started this?
Oh yeah. So I started researching when I was pregnant, and I've been doing it for, my firstborn is 5 now. So I've been doing it over 5 years. And I just started putting it all out on Instagram and it blew up. And then I started my website, and then I published my first book. And it was funny because along this happening, I ended up having 2 more children. So I have a 5-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a 1-year-old. And each time that I had a child, it made me realize how important it is for us to know the products we're accepting, and then to have the knowledge and confidence in whatever we decide to do. And that's one thing where I might differ for other people that you see on the internet. I'm not invested in what you ultimately decide. I cannot make that decision for you. I just want you to be informed. I just want you to know what the manufacturers say about their products, what the government knows about our products, just for you to walk in to that appointment with your pediatrician or with your doctor and just be an informed consumer.
It sounds like what you were seeing when you first hopped on to kind of research social media style, everything was very superficial. It was just yes and no's and blacks and whites.
Yes.
And I love that you're taking us all a lot deeper. And when we talk about things like adverse reactions, I just think of the pharmaceutical commercials. That we get all these commercials and it's clear that they're mandated to say blah, 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 blah. Like all
they're frolicking in the garden.
They speak the fine print. And unfortunately, like I'm sure that's mandated for a reason, mostly lawsuits, but it sort of dulls our brains to it. Like this is the part I don't need to listen to. And therefore, when we're looking into a product for ourselves, sometimes we're lulled into complacency thinking, oh, this is the part I don't need to listen to. This is the boring part of the pharmaceutical commercial. Mm-hmm. But you're right. If we don't read deeper than just someone else's yes or no or black or white, it's not truly informed consent. And I love this from your About page. I just have to read it because it is so who you are. Alexandra personally believes it is impossible to be unbiased. Yay! Reality, truth, honesty. Everyone has a bias based on their own personal experience and values. It's okay to have a bias as long as we're aware of it and can share in as objective a way as possible. Alexandra personally has biases against certain medical products, but she would never want someone to make a decision based on her own personal experience. She wants you to make your own decisions based on your own needs and desires. So how do you define informed consent, which really is the cornerstone of what you're doing?
Absolutely. So the American Medical Association, in their code of ethics, they define informed consent as a patient or parent having all the information that they need to make a well-considered decision. And that includes asking questions with your healthcare provider, with the manufacturer. So if you don't understand something on a manufacturer insert, you can say, what exactly does this mean? What was the rate of what that you saw this in clinical trials? Maybe what did you see it after the product was brought to market? So I have a free training course on my website, and I frame everything around that question. What do you need to know about this product's safetiness and effectiveness? And I take all the contextual information of the industry so that you understand when you're reading something what the CDC and FDA defines, for example, an adverse reaction. There's definitions on the CDC website that state an adverse reaction is an undesirable medical condition known to be caused by a medical product. So it's important for you to know all of the adverse reactions listed underneath that section have known to be caused by that medical product. Because I love that you brought that up. We kind of hear that legalese and we kind of tune out because we think, oh, well, they have to say that in case it happens. Or, there's situations if you're drinking water, that could be harmful. If you're eating avocado, you could have an anaphylactic reaction to that. But you still need to know, you still need to be aware of the ingredients that are in those products. Many people don't understand that there are known toxins in these ingredients in order to make them effective. And so even if you do accept that product, maybe understand that you need to lower your toxic burden elsewhere in your life if you do plan to accept that product. Or maybe you can implement some strategies to help your liver and help the natural detox systems that we have in our bodies to deal with those excipients, deals with those ingredients. So again, I kind of get attacked from all sides because I do say informed consent is a human right and everyone is welcome, whether you accept, delay, or decline any of the medical products. But even if everyone ended up seeing my stuff, ended up accepting a product, even if I have a personal bias against it, I would still be happy because at least they would be getting the informed consent that they deserve.
Because education is everything. I say this and I feel like I type this all the time, that awareness is power and information is power. For example, my daughter, we were saying, just got her wisdom teeth out this morning. And I shared that with my community earlier in the week, seeing if anyone had any last minute tips for us. And about a third of the people who responded said, don't do it. There's too many side effects. I've seen this video or I've seen that video. And I'm thinking, oh, it's literally Friday, but it's like in 2 days. But it was interesting. I watched one of the 8-minute videos and continued to inform myself, which I've done some pretty deep dives into this topic before. And it was a good reminder, though. It was like, okay, she still needs this. Her teeth are coming in sideways. They're going to mess up, all her other teeth, and they're already starting to cause pain. Those are the reasons to get it out. Could she have adverse reactions? Yeah, she could have a cavitation, which is an infection that just sort of hides underneath and becomes chronic. The fact that I know that, yes. And if she has any major health issues in the next year or so, I can at least think back and go, oh, the wisdom teeth. What if we need to put our detective hats on and dig into that? Like, we've accepted the procedure. She went under today, but I also know what to look for. And I feel like I have like Superman muscles because of that. That's what you give people. Tell us, Alexandra, what's been the best part, just the most like warm, fuzzy, rewarding part of helping people navigate informed healthcare decisions?
Well, exactly what you just said. I kind of call it that spidey sense. It makes you more alert to potential adverse reactions. If you do accept that product, that you can expedite treatment. There are many products on the market that we're told are infallible, and that's not true. And I get messages from people constantly that say, I accept this product. I was told it was an impossibility that the thing that I was trying to prevent wouldn't happen. And then early symptoms started happening and they kind of turned their brain off to it. They dulled that spidey sense. And so they didn't seek immediate healthcare or a medical treatment because they just thought it was an impossibility. So the rewarding aspect I get from it is knowledge and confidence, being able to give those skills that a parent or a patient can apply in their own life, whatever situation they're in, whether they accept, delay, or decline, is truly rewarding for me because it's something that I wish I would have had. Everything that I've created is everything I wish I would have had when I first started researching when I was pregnant 5 years ago with my firstborn. And now 3 children into it, I realized, man, I would have paid a fortune to have these resources because it's so important in any aspect of parenthood to understand the products that you're accepting to help or hinder your health and your children's health. And I personally believe as parents, we're stewards of our children's health. And so to be able to do that, taking that sense of fear and sense of guilt or shame or anything else that might come along with medical decisions, being just in a more empowered position. And I know the word empowerment gets thrown around all the time, but it truly is. Seeing parents be able to make those decisions for themselves and not rely upon anybody else to make them for them is truly rewarding.
Even though the word empowered can be overused, it's also true. It really is true. And I love that you use the word steward. My first business was kitchen stewardship, that we need to be good stewards of all the gifts we've been given, including our family's health. And it is tricky to navigate, though. Sometimes we get the stink eye. When I asked the surgeon that we did not use for my daughter's surgery, can this be done without going under, without anesthesia? He looked at me like I had like blue spiders like coming out of my head or something. I don't even know. He looked at me like I was crazy. So what do you help parents do as far as navigating that process? How do parents advocate for themselves in a medical setting?
I think that's a great question. And I come from a business background a lot of times because I was trained in business. That's what my degree is. And I think it's important upfront to understand that healthcare is a service. And when you are seeking health from a provider, yes, we can respect the many years that they spent for the better half of their adult life, the thousands of dollars that they spent to acquire this expertise and their clinical observations that they've had within their practice, but understanding too that it's a business and they have limitations in their business, whether maybe they just are specialized in a specific surgery with these specific parameters that they've always done this by. So whenever anybody goes outside of that, they do look like they have blue spiders coming out of their head because it's not something that they have expertise in. So understanding that, yes, we can be respectful, but also as a consumer, we can choose which ones we want to go with. So understanding that when you go into a doctor's appointment and you have issues and you're conveying your symptoms or your children's symptoms or whatever you're dealing with, that they are taking everything that you provide to them to create a diagnosis based on their experience, based on the observations that you provided, maybe some diagnostic testings or physical exams that they do for your child. And then they provide that diagnosis. And then you can accept that diagnosis, or you can go get a second opinion. Diagnoses are misdiagnosed about 20% in America currently. And so it's important to understand first, right off the bat, that if you don't agree with that diagnosis, you can go get a second opinion, third opinion, fourth opinion. You might have to pay out of insurance for that, but you do have a right as a consumer to do that. And then whenever your medical provider, you agree with that diagnosis, they're going to next provide a recommended treatment plan. That might include lifestyle changes, nutritional changes, maybe addressing stress or sleep hygiene. And then they might also include some pharmaceutical products. And you have the option to accept, delay, or decline those pharmaceutical products. And so that's where I step in. And that's where I say, okay, we know that manufacturers have created these pamphlets of information for healthcare providers and for patients and parents. So it's important for you to know everything that the manufacturer knows about these products. And I teach you step by step in my free training course and in my book how to read and interpret manufacturer inserts. And so I would suggest, because the average pediatrician's appointment is about 10 minutes in America, doing this research on your own, because there just isn't enough time to go through each part of the insert with your provider. It's best to do that before you go to the appointment and then highlight, print it out from the FDA website. And I teach you how to do this. And then maybe write some notes in the margins, highlight some things, and then bring it to your healthcare provider. And when you do that, it communicates to the healthcare provider that you are invested in your child's health and you're invested in finding the best solution for your child, whatever they're dealing with. So those are my quick tips. I have a whole chapter on questions to ask your provider before accepting a medical product. I also have a chapter about how to have productive conversations about medical products, how to find a provider who values informed consent. And we could spend hours talking about that, but that's the first few steps that I would recommend anybody taking.
And the website is justtheinserts.com. That's where we can find your free course. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Yep. Everything's on justtheinserts.com. And then I'm on Instagram and X at justtheinserts.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. And the book is called
Well Considered, a handbook for making informed medical decisions. And I specifically made it very small. It takes about 2 to 3 hours to go through because I was thinking about all the parents that are trying to do all this research during nap times or whenever your kids or you're sitting in car line or something. I made it small so that you would be able to get all the information that you need. And really, it's just teaching you a skill that you can incorporate into your life and then go forward from there. It's not something that you have to keep referencing. Hopefully, it's something that I can teach within you. So if you're in the ER appointment, you don't have to reference that book. You have it inside of you that you can be able to say, okay, I know how to look up an insert for whatever this trade name of a medical product the ER nurse just recommended for my child. Let me look it up real quick. It takes less than 5 minutes to look up an insert and read through all of it after you go through my book. I teach you how to do all of that.
And that skill is power. That is amazing. And if I may say that the skill prior to that is to ask questions.
Mm-hmm.
Don't you agree? When you're in a medical setting, like we feel like the doctor or the provider is above us and we're below. And sometimes that's physically true. They're standing and we're sitting, and it makes us feel small, and it makes us feel unimportant and uneducated and not even a player. But I love that you remind us that we are the consumer and that we have those decisions to make, and we can't make informed decisions without asking questions.
Very true. Yes. And that's where it goes into if a provider is recommending a product for your child, make sure you understand what it is. Ask what the trade name is. Ask them to write it down to confirm the spelling. And then even before that, ask what the diagnosis is. There were plenty of times, at least when I was military, where I was just prescribed something and I didn't even know what my diagnosis was. I had no clue what I was actually given that product for. And I hear this all the time from other parents. I'll say, okay, well, you're researching this product. What was the diagnosis for? Because if you look at the insert, there's different reasons why this product is recommended, and there's different adverse reactions based on what this product was recommended for. And they said, oh, well, I don't really know. So as a parent, know that first, so then you can go research it and apply it to your situation with your child.
That is terrifying to me that any provider would give someone a solution without telling them what the problem is. I think it speaks to that unfortunate dichotomy between provider and patient, where we feel like we're powerless, that people aren't immediately having alarm bells go off and asking those questions. No, like I'm not judging. I'm saying the culture has trained us this way, but
Yes.
We need you to remind us that we have agency. I'm curious call me silly if this is a silly question, but I know your site is called Just the Inserts, but do you teach people to go beyond the inserts to like the research of when this product is used for this diagnosis, how effective is it, in what population has it been studied? Do you go there?
I do, yes. But more in a historical context, because I realized the more that I shared inserts that there were certain segments of society that would discredit certain sections of the inserts. And so I would address, for example, different diseases that were known to be eradicated. But when you go back and look at the .gov research of it, and you look at the graphs, and you look at other things that might have happened during that time when that product was introduced that might have also caused a disease to decline, I do touch on those things and how maybe that product played into the culture and how immunity is playing out at large, globally and nationally. And then I'm kind of doing that now just because there's a lot of diseases that are now on the forefront of the news. I'm sure you're fully aware. And so always in the vein of informed consent, though, never in the state of you have to accept this product or you have to decline the product. It's just more of for you to have that contextual awareness that if you are accepting these products, this is what we are told, this is what is marketed to us. However, maybe the information from the .gov resources don't support that. And just for you to have a little bit more awareness of it. And I do touch on some potential financial conflicts of interest just because I got asked about it constantly. And there are financial conflicts of interest at the federal level with the committees that vote on some of these products being added to schedules or being added to best practices in hospitals, in pediatric offices. And then also at the pediatrician level, there are some potential financial conflicts of interest. Not all, just some, but it's just aware, again, because if you go into it with that framework that healthcare is a service, that's just something to be aware of. So then that you realize if you do encounter medical bullying, medical coercion, it's not personalized. It's not you, it's them. And so I get many times that new moms have messaged me and they're in tears because they had a negative experience with their pediatrician. And I know I've been there. I've experienced that as well. And so to kind of understand the whole external forces that are coming into that one interaction makes it a little bit easier to digest what's going on.
I feel like in my imagination, I'm picturing a parent opening up the insert, which is, it's folded to like an inch square, but it's huge. And so you unfold this insert and you start to read, and questions just pop out of the insert. And then you realize there's all these threads coming out of it. There's the thread of the research. There's the thread of follow the money. There's the thread of how your provider might have been trained. There's this thread of historical context. And it's so fantastic that you are teaching us to do that. Now you're saying open your eyes, open the insert, and follow all these threads. You might not take us down all those threads, Alexandra, but at least if we know they're there, we can start to do our own research. You mentioned medical bullying, which immediately made me think of an experience in my own life that 3 of my kids had whooping cough. Go figure. The one who was protected against it was the one who brought it home to the others, and they were fine. It wasn't fun. It's not called the 100-day cough for nothing. But when they had their well child checkups, I sort of caught them up. Like, here's what's going on. These had it. This one is still affected by the cough. And they were like, oh my gosh, you need to get the shot right now. And I felt so powerless. I mean, I knew a lot. I had a lot of information in this old brain of mine. And I was saying, I don't think they need it because they had it. Like, they literally have already had it. So they should be good. I still look back on the fact that 2 of my kids got poked that day, and I just feel a pit in my stomach. Like, that was the worst bullying I've ever experienced. The office soon after fired us and let us go. Thank goodness, because I didn't want to be there anymore, but I didn't know what to do. How do you define medical bullying? And did you mention that you have been and experienced that as well?
Yeah. So that pit that I'm talking about, that's what I'm trying to prevent. Even if you do accept the product, it churns me up and it breaks my heart when I hear parents being in that situation, because it doesn't have to be like that. And I have consistently cited this study that was done in 2024, and it was the level of public trust in all socioeconomic groups across all 50 states. And it started in 2020. And the public trust in medical providers dropped from 70% to 40% just in that short amount of time, which is drastic. That is a significant decrease in public trust in one entity in a short amount of time. So I think it's because of those situations where parents walk away feeling that they were strong-armed and that they were told that they aren't smart enough, or they don't have the authority to make those decisions for their children. That's wrong. And I talk about it in my book. There's a strategy that was adopted by the the American Academy of Pediatrics, and it's called the presumptive delivery strategy. And it is meant to decrease hesitancy to accepting a certain product or a class of products. And it is when a pediatrician comes in and says, these are the products that your child needs today, and there's no discussion. There's no time for questions. There's no allowance for any hesitancy or anything like that. These are the products that you're going to have, or you're going to be kicked out. And it's really unfortunate, because we don't see that anywhere else on the market. We don't see when you go into anywhere, really, where it says, This is absolutely what you need. And then you feel that shame or guilt for not accepting that product. So I advocate for more of a participatory approach, where there's providers that will say, okay, these are the products that are recommended for your child. I have seen some severe complications to this disease. I do have concerns over it. Pertussis, whooping cough, things like that. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about your fears. What are your fears for the complication of the disease? What are your fears for the complications or adverse reactions from this product? And that's what I advocate for, is that you can walk away making that decision knowing that you had all the information that you needed to make that informed decision, and you had the option to ask questions, and then the option to ask follow-up questions, because you realize as you start reading inserts, you're going to have more questions. And they kind of like breed like rabbits when you start reading the inserts, because you're like, wait, hold on, the manufacturer is saying this, but I thought it was this. And then you start asking those questions. But to answer your question earlier about my own personal experience, my firstborn, I didn't accept the newborn injections for her, but I did accept the synthetic vitamin K injection, which is technically a drug. And she was severely jaundiced. She was colic. She had neonatal acne, eczema. She had a lot of liver and gut issues. And I realized that she was injured. I didn't know specifically why, but I knew that she had been injured. I knew every time she ate, she was just in digestive turmoil. And I remember seeking advice from pediatricians and begging them to help me to heal her. And the entire time they were scolding me for not accepting other medical products. And so it just made me realize that it wasn't the environment that I thought. I thought that this was supposed to be somewhere that I go and seek advice and help from. And that's not necessarily always the case. There are good pediatricians out there. I want to be very clear with that, because they're in my DMs, and they're the ones reading my course and reading my book and giving me feedback. And I appreciate them so much. But there are ones out there that think that they have authority over you and your child, and so we want to steer clear from them. And then we want to maybe find a family doctor or find some other medical provider in our area that will have that collaborative partnership in finding the best solution for our child, because we have the most anecdotal experience and evidence with our children. We have the most observations with how they interact, how temperatures play in their bodies. Like there's one child that might have a high fever and she's completely fine. She's eating, she's playing, and she's okay. And then maybe another child has a low fever, but he's really lethargic and he's not drinking water and he's starting to show signs of dehydration. As parents, we know when we need to start seeking that expert advice. So having a provider that will respect that and honor that, I think, is just invaluable.
I love that. And, it's been a really long time since I thought about that story, that medical bullying, and it feels justifying to apply the term bullying to it because it was, and I felt completely powerless. And I just realized that that has had an effect on every medical interaction I've had since then, and that I just wait. I basically will not, it's probably wise to not say yes on the first day, but I wait an exceptionally long time before accepting just about any procedure, from a cavity being filled to a pill they want to give me. And I actually think it's probably a bit of a trauma response from that experience and despising so much how I felt walking out of that building with my two children. And I, like you, I don't want anyone to feel that. We should never feel as if we've been pressured into a major or minor medical decision. And I have to say, our doctor now is so amazing. Like, not our pediatrician, but our regular family doc. My husband's blood pressure was high, and he walked us through. He said, listen, I could give you the drugs and this is what it would do. It would bring your points down. Absolutely. But if I plug your age and all your numbers into, this online calculator or whatever, he said, I actually couldn't decrease your risk of death.
That's really important to know.
And I'm like, I love you, right? Like, I wanted to say that. That was my feel. I was like, oh my gosh, he just walked us through how this medication would and wouldn't work. And he's helping us make an informed decision. It was so enlightening and just surprising, unfortunately, that more doctors aren't like that. Do you see, over just the 4 or 5 years you've been doing this, is there a shift at all in the providers becoming more apt to be on your team, to be collaborative, or not yet?
I wouldn't say at large. I think we still have a way to go, but I will say that I would probably estimate about 50 to 60% of people that follow me are in the medical community. And most of them that message me privately, they feel like they've been shamed or silenced into submission. And I can sit here for hours and tell you some of the stories that they've told me of how in their own decisions for certain products, they don't feel like they have the bodily autonomy to accept, delay, or decline. And so many of them have told me that they didn't even know inserts existed. They were never taught it. I've had a nurse sit with me and send me videos of the different medical research books that she was taught in school, and kind of just how you can see the holes of where this research has been cherry picked starting in school, starting in their education. And I've personally taken CDC trainings just to understand what they're taught. And many of them aren't taught this. And so I have a lot of grace for the medical community, because how can you teach something to a patient, or how can you implement informed consent when that's not even what you're taught? So I think that there is a huge failure of the educational system for the medical professionals. And then there's definitely a failure of the public education we have so many resources available to us that we aren't told about and where it's not made aware of. For example, mandates or exemptions. We have in many of our states that it's actually protected by law for us to exercise informed consent. Unfortunately, many of us don't know that. So I do focus a lot on those for the community that is delaying or declining, because it's important that when you realize if you accept a product, you really don't have a lot of hoops to jump through. It's pretty easy. You just accept it and then you just follow up, and hopefully, you hope that there's no adverse reactions. But if you're part of the person that delays or declines, there are much more challenges depending on where you live that you will have to deal with, especially as a parent. So I do address those situations. And unfortunately, I get called many things because I do that. But again, it's just all informed consent. And so it's important for you to know. And that's why I say, too, that I love that even with people that accept products are part of my community, because now they understand what their neighbor might be going through. Maybe their friend has a contraindication that makes it more of an increased risk for them to accept that product. And maybe you can have a little empathy and compassion towards them, that maybe they're a little bit more risk averse and they don't want to accept that product. And they have to go through those those extra hoops, and you can have a little bit more kindness with them in the comment sections of certain posts, to realize that they're having to work harder just for them to implement informed consent in their decisions.
We need a bit more kindness in a lot of interactions in our world. And so thank you. If I could think of like all the lovely names in the world to call you so that I could refill your bucket after the meanie pants out there online.
That's so kind.
Part of me is not surprised because I know what the culture is doing, but part of me is just like, really, people, like you are so balanced and you're so in the middle. And I just want to thank you on behalf of all parents that you're going to probably exceptionally boring CDC trainings. You're the mom of a 5'3" and almost 1-year-old. It's not like you're an empty nester, like, oh, what should I do with all my extra time here? Go to the CDC training. Like, that is incredible to me that you are deep in this and you have very much committed to being a voice, to being an educator. And I'm just so pleased to have you on our podcast and connect our listeners with you. I want them to know that the first chapter of your book, right now at least, is free on your website. So you can go get started and read it. And you've mentioned a lot of little tips that are in your book. Sounds like it's super digestible. I love that. I have not gotten it yet because I just haven't yet because I don't have extra time on my hands, but 2 to 3 hours, that sounds really good. Also, you have started, I think, or about to start a provider directory where you're connecting some of these providers who really think informed consent is important to them, who are tucking parents in their hearts and not just in their pocketbooks. Tell us about that a little bit.
Well, so it's really all the providers that message me saying, I want patients like you. I want patients that are proactive in their children's health and ask all these questions and aren't just looking for a prescription to be filled, that they actually want to kind of end this cycle of adverse reaction to complication, that we all kind of get into that hamster wheel sometimes.
Right. Well, because if you know someone, I have to say, I know some people who have to be on significant medications or near the end of their life. Every time you start a medication, there's like, oh, this problem happened, but we can give you another medication for that.
And that complication just keeps going. So I have those providers that are asking me for more patients. And then I have parents that are saying, I want providers in my area. Do you know of anyone? So every now and again, I would go into my stories and say, okay, does anybody have Nova provider in this area? And then I realized that there are some great underground directories out there, but a lot of them are only a few per state, or they are neutral. Like you have to jump through all these extra hoops in order to exercise your informed consent. And so I just realized we need something easier as parents, kind of like Zillow, to be able to just go on and say, okay, this is my location. This is what I'm looking for. Okay, great. All of these providers have opted in that they will respect parental choice, that they will honor informed consent. So whatever products they have and they offer are available to you if you want them, but you can also delay and decline them. And it's been fantastic. We have about 2,000 providers that we're currently vetting because all of these providers have to opt in and also make that commitment. So then when they are added to the provider directory, you know that they know that they're on there, and it just makes it easier. So then when you call, you don't have those butterflies in your stomach wondering, am I going to be judged? Am I going to be rejected? No, these providers have opted in, so you can call and say, I found you from this directory. I'd like to make an appointment. Are you accepting patients? And then you can go from there. And it kind of takes that anxiety out of it, because that's something that I dealt with when I was trying to find a provider to help my daughter. She was in pain, and it took months for us to finally find a family doctor that would help us without pressuring us to accept something else. So that's really my passion out of it, is just making it easier to connect patients with providers who care.
And it is delightful. As I said, with our family doc, and honestly, in our pediatrician's office, we walk in and they'll look up the kids' charts for their well checkup and they'll say, oh, you're not interested in this or that type of product. And I say, nope. And even though I know it's going to be a casual conversation, it has been every time, year after year, I still get like, my heart races a little bit when the certain topics come up, because I feel like I'm going to be entering into a combative situation, even though I know it's not. And there's that like sort of trauma response again, I think, from that doggone medical bullying. Now, we've talked a lot about the pediatricians and the doctor-patient relationship, or the provider-patient or provider-client relationship, as perhaps we should think of it as consumers. But there's another player in this game, and that's the pharmaceutical industry. So in your experience, how can we as puny little peons start changing the way the pharmaceutical industry operates with like transparency and patient consent. I feel like nervous asking the question, Alex. How do you do this every day, girlfriend? Oh my gosh.
Oh, you just grow thick skin. But it's more so it's funny that you said that, because I would love to be doing pretty much anything else than this, but I just see this as an extension of parenthood. I see this as being able to have that knowledge and confidence to decide whatever works for my child. I just wanted that to be available to everybody else, because you get the parents that, like you, accepted those products and have this anxiety over it, or even if they delay or decline, they have that anxiety. And I think we're going to have an element of that no matter what, just with any products on the market, especially when we talk about our children's health. But there's a better way to do that. And I think for pharmaceutical companies, demanding that transparency and making sure that those inserts are easily available. For those that don't know, the inserts do come up packaged and folded into the actual box that comes in with the product, but they're also all available on the FDA website. You can easily go look them up, and I teach you how to do that in the book and the training course, so you don't have to rely and ask your doctor for the insert, because it's all on the FDA website. So continually communicating with our lawmakers to make sure that the pharmaceutical industry is held accountable for these different products, and making sure that we do have the option to accept delay decline, I think is important as well. I don't think most people realize that the pharmaceutical industry, there's a segment within the industry that is immune to any liability. And so if you accept those products, if you do suffer an adverse reaction, you can't sue them. And everyone that does accept that product ends up paying a tax on each individual dose of that product that goes towards severe injury or death, that's funded through taxpayer dollars and then implemented through a government entity. And again, I go through all of this in the book and the training course. And so that's important for us to be aware of. So I think in the aspect of ensuring pharmaceutical companies are bringing safe and effective products, that we make sure that we keep that pressure on them, and maybe speak with our legislators on removing that immunity would be great, because most manufacturers are liable for all of their products, and that just is common sense, right? If a manufacturer is going to be liable for potential injury or death, you would think that would be more investment for them to make a safe and effective product. So that's one aspect. And then also too, I think it's important when we're talking about pharmaceutical companies realizing that it's not necessarily a charity. I think we have this perception that the pharmaceutical companies are providing this gift of humanity, and that might be the case. There definitely are products out there that can be life-saving, but there are pharmaceutical industries or companies that have been held liable for corruptive practices, and we just need to be aware of that. We saw this with the opioid crisis. We've seen this with plenty of the weight loss drugs on the market. So just being aware and not really writing it off as conspiratorial, doing a little bit more research, and again, just holding those pharmaceutical companies responsible, and not feeling like it's our civic duty that we have to accept them. Again, going from that standpoint of, okay, we're being informed consumers. That's what we're focusing on here.
So absolutely. And I want to make 2 points. One is that some people are probably assuming, I mean, we're using very general language. This is going on YouTube. We need to be cautious. If you know what we're talking about, you know what we're talking about. So the first point is, if you don't know what we're talking about, it's the thing that childhood schedules happen and they're free for everyone. And it really grinds my gears to hear you say that my taxpayer dollars are going to pay for the company's problems that they cause, that they are not liable for by legislation, presented by people whom I'm paying with my taxpayer dollars. If that felt like a circle, it was. It's a vicious one. So we can get in the middle of it and we can try to stop it as consumers and as voters. And then the other thing is that some people are probably looking at you, oh, just the inserts. Oh, she just does the jabs. She just does the shots. That's all she's talking about. Absolutely not. You mentioned the weight loss drugs. You mentioned, what else did you just mention? Oh, the opioid crisis. So I've seen the fact that on your website, you go deep into all the inserts that you possibly can, all these pharmaceuticals, because we do want that contextual awareness when it comes to anything we are putting in our bodies, whether it's a leaf of lettuce that I bought from a farmer, right? Or a pharmaceutical that I'm injecting or that I'm swallowing as a pill form, whatever. There's a lot of questions we need to ask. And I'm a huge question asker. God bless my mother for raising me that way. Not everyone has that innate sense of like, I need to know more and hunger for knowledge, but we need to. We need to. You're there to help us a lot. Follow Alexandra. She will help you go down amazing rabbit holes and do some of the research that maybe we don't have time, or maybe we don't have the knowledge or understanding of how to do it. So thank you for being that voice. I'm really curious. I know your oldest is only 5, so this might be stretching like your parental experience a little bit, but here at Kids Cook Real Food, we are all about life skills. We're all about passing on what we hold most important to our kids, and the practical life skills and the philosophical life skills and everything in between. So particularly parents of tweens and teens are starting to think about the launch. We're starting to think about sending our kids off into the world, and how can they feed themselves? How are they going to manage their own budgets? How are they going to manage their own health care? Because if it's this hard for us as adults, how much harder is it going to be for an 18, 19, 20-year-old kid who might be sitting for the first time alone with a provider without their parents there? Do you have any thoughts?
I have many thoughts, but I will boil them down. So I actually just traveled to Michigan a few weeks ago and spoke at Hillsdale College. And I was so inspired by speaking to the college students there because they are so heavily invested. And I didn't even think at all about any of this when I was in college and high school. This was the last thing that I ever thought about. Making informed medical decisions was not on my radar. And so they are just, because look at what they just went through. They just went through this huge situation on a global national level. And so it's in the forefront of their mind. And I have such sympathy for them from what they went through, but I'm also grateful because now they have a hunger for knowledge, and then they want to know what they're accepting, and they're taking a little bit more authority on the decisions that they're making. So I do think that there's a lot of hope for the next generation. And I have plenty of moms that message me and say that they actually have their homeschool students take my free training course, and they incorporate that into their science lessons. And I think that's great because, again, everything I have is cited. You can go verify it yourself. It's all from .gov resources, and it teaches them these skills that can just be incredibly valuable for the rest of their lives, for themselves, for their friends, for their families. There's one woman that I was messaging, and she said that her husband was having cardiac issues, and they were in the ER, and she was able to research the insert while they were in the ER for her husband. Think about if we had tweens and teens doing that for their friends, if they got in a car accident and they were, able to make those informed, quick decisions and provide those resources to them. How amazing would that be? How would that shift our culture towards the future of being more mindful in the healthcare decisions that we make? So I think it's great that parents are talking to tweens and teens about it, because it's definitely incredibly important for whatever they decide. So if you have a homeschooler or you have a child, again, my training course is about 2 to 3 hours. It's free, no email required. There's optional audio in English and Spanish, and then maybe have them go verify everything that they found, and that they can start making that little seed of knowledge for them to start growing and start nurturing as they enter adulthood. And I said this too, that I wish I would have known this before I became pregnant, because I feel like when you become pregnant, it's almost too late to start researching things, because you have to research so much when you're pregnant. So getting that informed consent early on is fantastic. That's the best time to do it, in my opinion.
That is amazing. And I, again, so glad I asked that question, because I'm even processing like the way I'm training my own kids. My oldest are 16 and 19 already. So they're like in the launch phase / launched. And I know I've trained them to ask questions. I know I've trained them in a lot of skepticism and in that hesitancy. I'm sure they've seen the hesitancy, but they've also probably seen like, gosh, mom is being so dumb. Like, can I just get the cavity filled already? So it might not all be positive, but I feel like if I can find those 2 to 3 hours, I would love to do your class together, because they only have like the philosophy. They don't have the practical tools. I've never really taught them how to research. That's always just been me, giving it to them and floundering along on my own in this crazy world. So thank you for being a person who can help us stop floundering. You're like, get in the boat, everybody. Let's go. Let's look at these things and go down these rabbit holes in all the good ways. So my goodness, such good stuff. I love to leave parents, Alexandra, with a super practical step, because sometimes, you talk fast, I talk fast. We've been drinking from the fire hose today.
Yes.
So to get a quick win, what is the first thing a parent out there should do when this podcast ends?
I would say go look at my website, just dwell in it. I just updated it, so it's brand new, spanking new. It's beautiful. I had a few designers help me with it, and just go play around with it. Just go and look and maybe read some of the deep dives that I've done on Instagram, maybe watch a few reels. Just start to expose yourself to maybe the different aspects of informed consent, maybe the anatomy. I've done a series on my Instagram called The Anatomy of an Insert. They're very quick, digestible chunks of how to learn different parts of the insert, the different sections. So yeah, I'm obviously biased towards my resources, but I would say that would be a great first step is just starting to expand your mind a little bit more to this whole world, because the well is deep and you can quickly become overwhelmed. But just taking little steps here and there, if you're in car line or you're waiting at a dentist's office, just consume a little bit and then process it and then come back whenever you're ready for more.
Awesome. As you said, we're all biased, and you should be biased for your own resources. They're all .gov, like you said, so people can corroborate what they're reading. But I'm with you. I think that little baby steps is so important, and awareness is everything. So if we can just start with that 30,000 foot view, and deep dive when we're ready and when we need to know about a certain product, that is the way to go. My goodness, this has been amazing. This is one of my longer interviews, but it feels like we've been on for 17 minutes. I swear. This was so helpful, so in depth, so fantastic. Thank you, Alexandra.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Healthy Parenting Handbook podcast. I hope your brain feels fed and your heart feels full, and that you feel connected, knowing that there are other parents on this journey with you. We're just trying to raise healthy, independent adults. And the next time you think, man, there is no handbook for this job, now there is the Healthy Parenting Handbook. Look up the podcast wherever you listen to your podcasts. Please leave a review, my friends, as that helps other parents who need this information to find us. And of course, subscribe. That's a huge help. You can also look for our shorts as a reel on Instagram at Katie Kimball Kids Cook, or subscribe to the Healthy Parenting Handbook Shorts channel on YouTube. You'll get those bite-sized portions of healthy parenting advice.